Hey guys, welcome to episode 9 of the Dash Gamer podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Dash, along with my co-host, Mr. Ryan Betson. What's going on, Betson?
Not much, man. How are you?
I'm doing good, mate. Doing, just chilling, vibing, feeling the week. It's a weird one because in the last couple of weeks, we're still light on news. Obviously, with the pandemic still going, we're kind of like in that phase right now where this month is going to be completely dry.
Yeah, how is that ISO life?
I'm bored. I am bored. Yeah. But at least content creation is keeping me sane, and we are in a fortunate state right now where we get to do this content, and it keeps us sane, basically.
It helps.
It definitely does. Guys, if you didn't know, this is the Dash Gamer podcast, our bi-weekly gaming podcast, where we all come together and talk about all the things in video gaming, all the latest stuff in video gaming. I don't know the rigmarole anymore because there's no rigmarole set yet. But I'll get flux. Don't forget to follow us over on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Spotify for those cheeky 5-star ratings. And also catch us on our VOD over on dashgamer.com. Now, I did quickly mention their SoundCloud for those who haven't been listening to Operation PlayStation. We have moved back to SoundCloud due to just some stuff that happened with that host that we were using prior. So we are back on SoundCloud. So to our SoundCloud listeners, hey again, thank you for listening as well. And yeah, we're back again. But I'm going to jump into some housekeeping, Betson. So for dashgamer.com this week, we have our Predator Hunting Grounds review thanks to PlayStation Australia. Our Trials of Mana review thanks to the confolk over at Bandai Namco Australia. Our Sakura Wars review thanks to Bandai Namco Australia as well. Streets of Rage 4 review will be live as soon as this goes up, as well as our Gears Tactics review thanks to Xbox Australia for that. And thanks to Madman Entertainment, this is the first one, our Kill la Kill, and that time I got reincarnated as a slime anime reviews will be live this weekend. So big thanks to Madman. That's our first official sponsored Madman anime reviews, and we're so happy to be able to provide those. So look out for those on the weekend. Betson, housekeeping.
Not much different than usual for everyone. It's mostly the same. It's PlayStation show for the players. This week we talked about Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which we're talking about again today.
Yep.
There's a bunch of laughs, crap, that sort of stuff. And for the young and the wrestlers, it's just about making our way into Money in the Bank. It's kind of what we're working to right now. Other than that, it's pretty much the same, dude.
I'm hyped for Money in the Bank.
I think there's the novelty there because for those who don't know, they're climbing the corporate ladder. So they're using the WWE headquarters. You start in the lobby and they have to fight their way to the roof to then get the briefcase hanging on top of a ladder in a ring on the roof.
It's going to be interesting.
It's like the Raid, but probably not as good.
Exactly. Let's jump into the first bit of news tonight. And this one comes by way of Shannon over at Press Start, who says it's the big one for the day. The Last of Us Part 2 has gone gold. Ahead of its June 19th release date, The Last of Us Part 2 has gone gold. The announcement was made this morning by Neil Druckmann on Instagram, who described that game going gold is when the disc is being pressed, with the executable being put on the PlayStation Network. He went on to thank his team by saying that this is the most ambitious, or quote, "This is the most ambitious game we've ever made. I know I've said this before, but you won't know, to what degree until you get your hands on it. And just see the care that has gone into every detail from the level design, the mechanics, graphically how the game looks. Environment, art direction, characters, story, the audio design, the soundtrack. Oh my god, the soundtrack is so amazing," end quote. He also went on to say that even the team, quote, "We've played this game and can't count how many times we know it inside and out, but it emotionally still moves us. I just finished a playthrough and was still crying by the end of it," end quote. Great news. Look, if anything, it's kind of early that they did go gold.
It's beautifully early. It's like 6-ish weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks.
Yeah. I am still in the belief that this game's been gold for a while, though.
Look, see, so personally, like I've got on the record on both For the Players and here on Dash Gamer, stating that the conspiracy that they weren't ready to go and they've taken advantage of the current pandemic to get a little bit extra time. But I'm pretty confident I'm going to eat my words there, mostly because we're 6 weeks out.
Yep.
They could have pushed it another 2 weeks and before they went gold, but they're gone gold now. So
yeah,
looks like I'm wrong,
well,
and I couldn't be happier. To be honest,
it's a definitive statement saying that the games are on discs now, and they're out there. I just still am in the belief that this game was pressed for its I won't say initial release date because the initial one was February, for its first delay, which was the end of this month. And by the looks of things, they're on track for that as well, because usually
they could have even been on track if using regular time frames. They could be gold now and be ready for the end of this month.
Yeah.
So as I said, that's what puts a lovely spanner in my original statement, which I'm very happy to be turned around on.
Well, it also puts things into perspective as well. I mentioned to you and Paul the other day in our little Dash Game Podcast Facebook group chat that I've heard rumors and there is some speculation that the game actually might be pushed forward again. And with the game being pressed as it is and the executable already on the PlayStation Network, ready for people to preload, I'm still in that belief that, one, the game has been pressed for a while, and two, if that rumor is true, we might see this game in a few weeks' time. It's a
I think it would come down to potentially with the current circumstances, they are likely unsure what the expected delivery time would be from A to B, right?
Yeah.
So I guess by allowing this X amount of time, if they get confirmation that it's in all the places it needs to be, they're like, well, all right.
Yeah.
And they start flicking switches, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Also to join on to this story, this one comes by way of, Jordan Ollerman over at IGN, who says, The Last of Us Part 2 download is 100 gig minimum. They've got to contain a clicker somehow. The digital download of The Last of Us Part 2 will require at least 100 gigabytes of hard drive space. The game's American store page includes the space requirement at the bottom amid licensing and copyright details. It was already common knowledge that the physical release of The Last of Us Part 2 would ship on 2 discs, so it's no surprise that the digital download is sizable. Red Dead Redemption 2 first brought back the 2-disc trend when it launched back in October 2018, but stopped you from having to switch halfway through by including a data disc and a play disc. Whatever format you go for, make sure you clean up your PlayStation 4 storage before release day. It's been a rough week for The Last of Us Part 2 after major plot points were leaked early in the week. And we'll get into that story in a little bit. With obviously a large file size in play, they've had to put it across to, you know what's coming. You put it across 2 discs. And Betson, I want to take you back to June 11th, 2019. The Dash Culture.
Back in the time machine.
Dash Culture E3 special. Day 2 from last year. And we're going to take everybody back there. So before anything, I want
Back then.
I want everybody to take a look at this.
He spoke. I can't remember whether it was Nomura at the time. One of the two of them were talking.
Yeah.
They were talking about how it's the size of 2 discs. I'm like, does that mean that there's just going to be a part 1 and part 2?
No. What are you doing? It's going to be 2 discs again.
It's 2 discs in the one thing coming on March 3rd.
Yep.
But that game is part 1 of the project.
That is just poorly compressed game.
But yeah, they weren't very transparent on that.
Like, how fucking huge
20
is an
years
alleged
later.
PS1 game? This is bullshit.
Well, the PS1 game was on 2 discs.
Horribly poor optimization if you have to put 2 fucking discs on one portion of a PS1 game.
But hold on, the
third of a PS1 game.
Yeah, the PS1.
Fuck 'em.
Well, the PS1 game was on 2 discs.
Yeah, it was PS1. It was $9.97. You could fit 18 songs. Not even 18 songs on MP3s on a CD.
Oh,
Yeah,
Paul's got it here.
And they're like, oh, here is
4 discs.
100
No.
gigs.
The first one is the Final Fantasy VIII demo.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
There is 100 gigs of potential storage. Nah, it's 1/3 of this game. Red Dead fucking Redemption was 2 discs.
The 15th
No.
entry in its own fucking franchise
They're
came out
joking.
20 years later, and they're trying to say that this is bigger and more expansive than 15. Yeah, no, that it frustrates the shit out of me.
That is
Do you,
Let 'em- let 'em
broken.
go
okay,
with
do you
their-
think? Okay, hold on. Do you all think that this might be poor optimization?
Fuck
No.
yes. Fuck yes.
No,
That's what happens
no.
when you build a game.
I'm so
fuck it,
adamant.
and rebuild it on top of the other one. But
Yeah.
the real question is, if everyone's demanding a remake of this game from its original PS1 form,
Yeah.
and they're adding all this unnecessary trash to it, I'm projecting here. That wouldn't that then negatively impact people's belief of this game? Like, no, we wanted just the old one redone, and now you've added all this bloat to it.
Well, I mean, if they had Crisis Core, that's good. If they had Dirge of Cerberus, that's real bad.
Yeah.
So there's some
None of
bloat.
that was real words.
Betson, I'm disappointed in you. All right, for being a PlayStation fanboy and not playing any of these games.
Final
Yeah.
Fantasy can suck a dick.
So,
Good times.
so that was last year.
Yeah.
Obviously, your stance has changed. Yeah.
Oh yeah, don't listen to that fat fuck. Like he had no idea what's going on.
All right. Tell me what your thoughts are on the disc now. Like the file size, the obviously the disk space being across 2 discs. Now the thing is, when we spoke about this last year, you obviously mentioned Red Dead Redemption in that as well, and there was obviously Red Dead Redemption noted in this article, bringing back the 2 disc format in terms of an install disc and a data disc. Final Fantasy brought that back, even though you kind of were like, well, it's a PlayStation game.
The answer for that, I was wrong. I was completely wrong, and that comes down for a couple of different reasons.
Right.
One, I truly did not expect, or I was ignorant to what the scope of this game was going to be in terms of Final Fantasy, right?
Radio.
Because it's a remake. As of right now, every remake of a game has been a slightly pumped up version. So the expectation there was minimal. And because I wasn't following the train of release and information around Final Fantasy, I'm like, okay, really, how much more can it be? Like I played, Red Dead Redemption. Like this game is fucking ginormous and it is visually stunning.
Yep.
I can understand why it needs 2 discs.
Mm-hmm.
However, with Final Fantasy, I was just fucking idiot. I was just ignorant because, having played it now, being like, hey, this game's rad.
As Paj says in the chat, as he was in the clip there, that commentary came back to bite you in the ass 69 different ways.
See, the big thing is,
Yep.
I don't know whether you guys know this.
Mm.
I don't fucking know anything. Just like almost all podcasters / video game commentators, I'm in the back room of my house right now. I ain't got no fucking real experience. Let's talk out my ass on a weekly basis.
Does it excite you hearing, though, how big the game is?
Yes and no.
How come?
Well, I say yes because it's gonna presumably look fantastic.
Yep.
And have this massive, awesome scope. But it's just like that's a lot of game. I'm old.
Yeah,
Pressed
but-
for time.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. But when you
But
say
saying that, but then the other most of me is like, oh, yeah.
yeah. Well, obviously, I mean, we're excited because the fact is we're getting we're in the file size alone, we're promised an expansive experience out of this whole thing. Do you think, though, with the circumstances of the leaks that have come out and some of the reception, obviously, that has come out of these leaks, will impact regardless, this is going to impact the way that people perceive everything that's been put in, like the effort and the narrative that's been applied and everything else. Have you read any of the reception at all?
No.
Okay.
I have completely stonewalled against it. Cool. Mostly because this game is pretty huge to me and I want to play
Obviously,
it. So
yeah.
I'm completely avoiding all spoilers at any cost, all responses to the any takes on the spoilers. I got no time for it.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah.
So all I'm hoping is that if it's gold now and there's 6 weeks until release, hopefully, if I can be like, PlayStation, come on, PlayStation, I love you. And then maybe I can play it sooner. That's of what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm pretty excited. The thing that I'm more worried about in terms of, well, I guess, look, all these criticisms, 100% valid around Naughty Dog as a business and their business practices.
Mm-hmm.
I am worried that that approach or that viewpoint on Naughty Dog will hinder this game. Now, don't get me wrong. As I said, these criticisms of Naughty Dog and their crunch and business practices is 100% valid.
Yep.
Like, nothing is worth the mental destruction of your staff.
No, obviously
nothing.
Not. Yeah.
So yeah, that's my concern, is that narrative is gonna overtake the game.
There was a kind of a call to action this week regarding Naughty Dog's reputation heading out of development for the title, and so obviously surrounding COVID-19 and finalizing the title and everything. There was the delay back in February, right before COVID-19 kind of overtook America, and how bad it's become over there right now. There was people saying that Naughty Dog weren't taking care of their employees for the crunch time. There was, in fact, even more crunch during that delay period from February to May. And COVID-19, the situation there was completely overlooked by some of the heads over at Naughty Dog. And then Naughty Dog kind of came out recently and said, that's actually false. If anything, we actually offered our employees medical health, like different types of coverage, like mental health coverage, just in turn general health coverage. Like, they really wanted to help out their employees as best they could. Do you think, though, with that, the crunch kind of deal, do you think that gives them an excuse to say, look, we may have made you work that hard, but we also gave you full medical health coverage?
Yeah, but it's a situation of but we forced you into that need.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And that's the real problem here.
Yeah.
In terms of that, so like, oh, you've got these medical benefits. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Now we're going to push you until you need those benefits. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that's probably the big thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tough one.
It's really catch-22 right now in regards to the whole situation. Obviously, it sucks that Naughty Dog's reputation has come under fire for crunch culture, but it's also for the fact that most of the view has been put onto its lead director, Neil Druckmann, who's now apparently their vice president. So like, for somebody, I know that Neil Druckmann's reputation has been perceived as somebody who is a workhorse and wants to make sure that everything that's delivered in the video games that Naughty Dog produce is of benchmark quality standard. They want to be above industry standard. They want to be leading industry standard.
Yeah, and that is the big hurdle that Naughty Dog have to face is when you've had sort of critically acclaimed game after critically acclaimed game, like there is that self-imposed expectation, right? They want it, the people want it bigger, they want it better, they want it leech in all these different ways. So there is that internal stress on pushing yourself to that point, right? In order to do more and more. So that's hurdle number one. And then, it's and I'm like, there is this part of me as well, like, it's not okay. Like, please don't take this as I'm okaying their actions. Like, within a creative field or creative endeavors, it's not as simple as 9 to 5.
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
and like that is part of it. However, from what the accounts of Naughty Dog are, it is noticeably more than 9 to 5.
Oh yeah,
and that's where it's like, it's rough.
It is definitely rough. And I think most of the blame should not be put on one person over there. I mentioned that on Operation PlayStation that Druckmann is a lead developer, but he's also just a worker like everybody else. It's not all. At the end of the day, they have bosses to answer to, and most of those people are directly at Sony Interactive Entertainment, who give them their due by date. Basically, this is the time you get. If you don't meet it, we need to know ahead of time. And then you guys get a couple more chances, but you have to get the game ready for this.
That
specific
is
date.
true, but that's like where project managers and producers and stuff are
Right.
involved in. My understanding was there was a window of time that they didn't have producers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like that's baffling that they've been able to get where they are without those people sort of keeping them on track and keeping them in line and keeping them in the right direction. Because the producer's job is to literally keep shit on track, keep shit within cost, and just kind of, you know, go through those motions. So look, there is that argument that crunch is a demonstration of poor management, and I kind of agree with that to an extent, because there is part of that. And I'm like, you know, everyone that's some sort of creative endeavor, I mean, as you get close to that final line, everyone goes ham.
Oh yeah. It's just, I think that it's just kind of sad how something is long awaited as The Last of Us Part 2. It always comes, like all these things, they always come out in a timely manner. Like, oh, this is happening now, and it's like, why wasn't this reported before? I mean, look, Naughty Dog was in some real strife with its development cycle of Uncharted 4, when they had a whole cast ready to act out the entire thing, you know, in their mocaps and everything else. They had Amy Hennig ready to direct it like normal, and then there was a huge fallout between Neil Druckmann. It was public. Neil Druckmann and Amy Hennig. And out of the entire thing, Amy Hennig was let go from the company. The entire cast, besides Nolan North and a couple of the mainstays from the original titles, the original trilogy, were left over. And then they had to recast the whole thing, rewrite the whole thing, reshoot the whole thing, redevelop the whole thing. It made a big mess. Reputation-wise, the company was like, this person's leaving, Bruce Straley's leaving, and this person's leaving. And it just became one big clusterfuck. Do you think... I was going to say, do you think on the other side of this, we might be seeing something similar?
Potentially.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of everyone up and leaving sort of thing.
I have a feeling that after this is done, let's get the fuck out of here.
I think so. I think there is part of that when you look at all these people that have done big things. If you want to keep it within PlayStation, look at the likes of Sean Layden, you know, and like people, you know, he headed up this giant worldwide studio.
Yeah.
Or worldwide studios, I should say. And then he's like, nah, I'm done.
Yeah.
I mean, that happens. And like that happens in every job. Like there are people that go and do massive projects for companies and it's huge and it's ginormous. And they go, nah, I'm done.
Yeah.
And that happens. Like regardless of what your job is, there are times when you just go, yeah, I'm done.
Well, Jack Tretton left behind something of a legacy with PlayStation 4. It just didn't help him with the PlayStation 3, obviously. But with the PlayStation...
Yeah, but even like Gio Corsi as an example, like he, you know, was big part of like second party development and like independence.
Vita.
Then he scooted to go and the whole push the Vita, and now he's over at Ilphonic, you know what I mean? Like he went from this bigger part to a smaller space.
He
is
sure
it
is.
Is it Ilphonic?
Yes, he is. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like it's like, hey, big, and then you go small because it's just one of those things. Like when they originally put out the idea of what, you know, Naughty Dog was, like everyone has that line. Every job I've ever been to always has an area of turnout.
Of course.
Turnout? No, whatever the word is for. But like there's a 6 month, you know, there's like a month window with turnover. Thank you, where everyone just suddenly leaves.
Yeah, turnover. Yeah.
Like what the fuck? And then it'll go 18 months without any turnover. And then, bam, there's another month of everyone leaving again.
Yeah. Paul
part of the job.
Paul in the chat says, Dash, don't you speak ill of GA. Look, yeah, we discussed this, Badge, regarding Predator. Obviously, with Ilphonic developing.
We talk a bit more about that tonight?
I will talk a little bit about that tonight, yeah.
Sick.
We did discuss this, myself and Paul did discuss the fact that Gio Corsi is now one of the developers over at, or one of the lead developers, I believe, at Ilphonic at the moment. But yeah, he says in the chat game ship that he came in super late on the project. Look, fair enough, but we'll talk about that later. I've got some thoughts, and so does Betson, I bet. Speaking of more Last of Us news, this one comes by way of Jonathan Dornbush and Joe Scrabbles over at IGN. They say The Last of Us Part 2 leak is not affiliated with Sony or Naughty Dog. There is an update to this article as well. I'll only read the update because the rest of it, we all know the story. The Last of Us Part 2 leak was instigated by hackers that found a security exploit in Naughty Dog's older games, according to multiple sources. Journalist Jason Schreier, formerly of Kotaku, tweeted to say that a patch in an older Naughty Dog game inadvertently allowed access to the developer's servers, allowing hackers outside of the company to access footage and of devs playing a non-final build. That corroborated a thread from an anonymous game developer, PixelButts, who had earlier claimed to know the initial hackers and went into detail on the process they used to gain access. He also claims that the initial hackers were not responsible for the leak, but that their method of entry to Naughty Dog servers was likely shared to those that disseminated the footage. Those leakers remain unknown publicly. PixelButts subsequently told Kotaku that the exploit was fixed as of April 30. Neither Sony or Naughty Dog has made further comment on this situation since last week's statement. Now, for those who aren't aware, obviously with the footage out in the wild, be careful, use your mute words on Twitter and everything. There are spoilers out there. I have stumbled across them. I have watched them on purpose, really, to be honest. But there was nothing of context that I could make out from it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But in saying that, the fact that hackers were able to gain access this easily into Naughty Dog servers to gain footage of the game itself, very concerning in terms of security. The fact that, once again, Sony, this is once again a Sony issue, if anything, but it was also noted by PixelButts on Twitter that this is also an Amazon connection. There was like some sort of deal that the back end was hooked through Amazon's digital shop or something rather, and that they were able to gain access through that way as well. There was just one big clusterfuck of a digital hack to gain access to Naughty Dog servers. And the fact that they could do that from home, based off an early update from the first game, and Uncharted 3, not 4. It's like, what the fuck kind of security system are you guys running over there? That's just mind-blowing. And to think, Uncharted 3 and The Last of Us. Last of Us, the first one, came out on PlayStation 3 back in 2013. And Uncharted 3 came out in 2011. Now, if they're using updates from the PlayStation 3, that's just terrible. Like in terms of trying to hide access. But we also know that PlayStation 3 was flawed in itself due to hacking the PlayStation Network at the time and everything else. And it was pretty close to that release as well, to those two releases that situation happened. I'm not sure whether the update files were part of the PlayStation 4 version of the title, which I highly doubt, but if they were, that's even worse. The fact that hackers were able to gain access to Naughty Dog servers through PlayStation 4 updates, it tells me that Naughty Dog aren't the only team right now that have that security flaw within their servers. The hackers are able to actually access any developer, like any random developer. I can't say every single one of them, but a random developer who might have a gateway that they haven't plugged yet, like a leak that they haven't plugged up yet, and people are able to access early gameplay, early footage, or whatever, even files to these games. Which was my initial concern when I spoke to you guys about it, because obviously I come from a homebrew background, and I kind of know some of the language, and I spoke to you guys about that. Like, I was like, the different passwords might have been out there and everything and so forth, and people, if they have the executable on their computer, then there's going to be more leaks and da-da-da-da. But from this kind of side of things, from the journalist side of things, it's just a concern that these first-party developers that work with Sony might have security flaws and they don't know. What's your thoughts?
Well, that was my thing. My concern was around security, because I found it very interesting that when the statement came out from PlayStation, they're like, "Hey, it's not anyone affiliated with Naughty Dog or Sony," and then the internet went, yeah, that's good."
Yeah,
I'm like, no, that's fucking way worse.
Yep.
Like that is a staggeringly worse thing to hear.
Yep.
Like if it's a disgruntled employee, that makes sense. They have access.
Yep.
They've just misused the access they were given.
Yep.
Here, someone breached that access
Yep.
to acquire this information and then release it.
Yep.
That is huge.
Yes.
That is absolutely huge.
Yeah. Well, it's just the sake of somebody, just a random hacker being able to access first-party developer servers from home. It's a cause for concern for Sony, and I almost feel like it's being brushed off completely in a way that hasn't been tackled properly. I feel like, yeah, we've caught him and we plugged the hole and, you know, everything should be okay. No, I don't think so. I would have been like, shut everything down. We have to investigate properly because they can take anything. And by anything, I mean like everything. They can take, and this was the deal back in, like I connect this back to the 2000, I think it was 2009, 2010 hackings, where people were robbed. There was credit card details stolen, you know, different information that was taken. What makes this any different to them just accessing servers?
Yeah, see, the big difference here is that's under the assumption that what they were accessing here were, general Sony servers, right? Where here, my assumption is that they kind of went back end into Naughty Dog. So they didn't go into Sony overall, like, where all the client files, where, customer files are. It's more of they went direct route into Naughty Dog.
Yeah.
So my concern, because, if I think about it, business, like in a business space, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, this is corporate risk to the max. Yep. They could have been like, hey, look what we have. We could leak it, or we could blackmail the fuck out of you.
Yeah. Yeah. It still is a cause for concern. It's a cause for concern for Sony, and it's a cause for concern for its consumer base, its customers as well. Because for that,
yeah, very, very, very much so. For the average customer for PlayStation may not understand that those services would be different, right?
Yeah.
For them, it would be a situation of, oh fuck, if this is as you pointed out, like rightly so, like, is this the same as the 2011 hack where my stuff got compromised?
Exactly.
And it's like, well, no, but like, yes, but Sony got hacked again, right?
Yeah, they did.
It is
Stevie Jar in the chat says, you don't shut down until you know what's compromised, how they got in. No, not really. I mean, the problem with that afterwards is if you leave that open, I mean, yeah, you can plug up the hole, but you still don't know whether that's just one entryway. There could be multiple, and that'll be a big problem afterwards, because they could probably, if you shut one down, you only anger a hacker, and they try to get in through different ways, and they can stumble upon anything afterwards, and that is dangerous. So you don't want to risk that. Betson, let's move on from The Last of Us and Naughty Dog. Are you excited to follow up with more Final Fantasy VII, by the way?
I'm open to it.
Cool, because this one
my stance is less extreme than it was in June 2019.
This one comes by way of Matt Purslow over at IGN, who says, Final Fantasy VII remake producer wants to keep developing small chunks at a fast pace. As we know, like Final Fantasy, obviously, the Final Fantasy VII remake is made in different portions. So it's got an upcoming sequels, it's got follow-ups to it. So it's not just Final Fantasy VII remake and then it's the entire game. It's Final Fantasy VII, the remake, part 1, part 2, part 3, apparently. So in this, the producer says Matt Purslow says, Final Fantasy VII Remake's co-director, Tetsuya Nomura, has said that he would like to deliver the next part of Final Fantasy VII's remake's story quickly, and to do so would require focusing on a, quote, small portion of the overall plot. The quote comes from an interview in the Final Fantasy VII Remake Ultimania. You're right there, Betson?
My watch fell off my wrist.
A guide and law book are now available in Japan. You and Paj can shake hands. The quotes were shared online by Twitter account Abo and translated by IG in Japan, and include this snippet from producer Yoshinori Katase, and co-director Nomura. When asked about how many parts of the remake will be comprise of, they spelt it wrong, but anyway, Katase said, quote, "We have a rough idea on that, but it's not being completely decided yet. It's impossible to talk about this right now. It seems that many people will think it will become a trilogy. It all depends on excuse me. It all depends on how many parts we make," end quote. Said Nomura, quote, "If we separate into bigger chunks, it will take more time. But if we take small portions, it can be done on a shorter span. Personally, I would like to deliver it fast," end quote. I'm for it, because if anything, if it's going to be of the same quality that we got in Final Fantasy VII Remake, yeah, I am for that big time. I believe that splitting the original Final Fantasy VII story, where a lot of people complained about bloat within the story and bottlenecking and making things up to kind of further the narrative a little more. I think that they recreated and reimagined the narrative to suit gaming as it is now. Because if you lifted the exact narrative from the PlayStation 1 version of the title and took it to the remaster, it wouldn't translate perfectly into our current generation cycle, in our current climate of gaming. And also then, you know, we get these individual splits between the story itself and the campaign, and then they want to develop it at a faster pace. Like, they want to release it in a different cycle, in an episodic cycle, as it was kind of rumored last year, more episodic than more parts. I'm okay with that. I am honestly okay with that. What's your thoughts, Betson?
Mine comes at it from a couple of different ways. Okay. I think it's a much more viable option for them to do it in smaller chunks, where they can still deliver the same quality in a quicker turnaround. So that's exactly what he said, which is fantastic. But on top of that, though, there is that concern of, okay, so if it's not the big experience that we got here, it is a smaller experience. Are they still going to be charging the same amount of dollars per episode? So are we going to, if they're releasing smaller chunks, same price, say they break it down to like 5 parts, so 5 parts at $60 or 5 parts at $100 Australian retail, RRP, we're looking at a $600, $500 game.
That's true.
You know what I mean? And like, so that would be a big concern if you think about it that way.
That's actually good. Good way to put it. The thing is, though, with Final Fantasy VII Remake, the first part, we got one portion of the story, which was the Midgar portion, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, the Midgar portion's a bit." I think they did a spectacular job in retelling the Midgar portion of the story, if anything. But there are better parts of the story to come that obviously they want to deliver at a more streamlined pace and a seamless pace, rather than having it staggered, bottlenecked, just for the sake of getting these games out to the public and to the consumer. They don't want to risk dissatisfaction once it's gone gold. But I believe that releasing them episodically, look, if they turn around and go, it's episodic, and you're gonna get it at like half the price you got Final Fantasy VII Remake at, because it's only half the length, then I'm okay with that, because it wouldn't be like a 30-hour experience that we got with its initial remake entry. We're now being told, hey, look, it's essentially kind of like DLC for that first entry. Which honestly, if they turn around and said, look, if you've got the disc, if you own the disc, or if you already own the first part, then it's gonna be like DLC for that. So
that would actually be, I would be much happier with that as delivery method.
Yeah.
And rather than each individual games.
Yeah.
So the DLC approach would be pretty fantastic, and that would allow you to release smaller chunks.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a smart way to go about it.
Yeah.
Whether they do that or not is probably undetermined at this point. But it's until we hear more.
Yeah.
Because there is, you know, having not played the original, because I know that you're at the end of this game, you're out of Midgar, and then that's when you start doing the big open worldy sort of things, right?
Yeah.
So what other, because they seem to be separating it by location. So here we'll have, you know, Midgar, then we'll have the wildlands, the outskirts, whatever they call it in the game.
Yep.
Is there then a third area? Is there a fourth area?
Yeah.
Like, is that probably how they would be easiest way to separate it?
I don't think that would be the easiest. I don't think that would be the most creative. I don't think that that's the way they should approach it, only because Midgar was a huge portion of the original. I like the Outlands were just as big, but I believe that if they are going forward with the Final Fantasy VII series, keeping it locked to a trilogy should be something that they should think of. I don't think that they should be considering a complete franchise based on the one game. And the reason I say that is because people already know the story. It's established and it's been around. What people want to experience out of this remake is a reimagining, a fresher experience from their beloved Final Fantasy VII. To stretch it, just elongating the entire campaign just to kind of make more money, I guess, just to kind of make a more of a commission off work, I believe is a little disingenuous of them to do. I believe that if they follow through on actually just keeping it as a trilogy for the sake of showing people, look, this is how we actually imagined Final Fantasy VII back in the day. Now you guys are actually seeing it through our eyes. That's probably better.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think most people went into this thinking a remake, like your traditional remakes that we were used to.
Yeah.
But as you know, the wording that you put there is spot on. We instead a reimagining was given, which I think is I think it's better. I think it's a good approach to remakes. However, granted, Final Fantasy VII remake had a tumultuous sort of development cycle situation.
Yeah.
But we cannot have 5 years in between parts here.
Yeah, I agree.
Because we're about to cross into a next generation, and then say if it is a trilogy, that's upwards of 10 years, and that's 2 out of 3, straddling your generation. It's a risky move to make.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Moving on from Final Fantasy VII, this one comes by way of Sammy Barker over at Push Square. That's an Assassin's Creed Valhalla is being developed by a frightening 15 studios. Now, you guys talked about this
all in house. Not really that amazing.
You guys talked about this on For the Players as well. But the 15 studios that are named here are Ubisoft Sofia, Ubisoft Singapore, Ubisoft Montpellier, Ubisoft Barcelona, Ubisoft Kiev, Ubisoft Bordeaux, Ubisoft...
It's Bordeaux.
Bordeaux, thank you. Ubisoft Shanghai, Ubisoft Chengdu, Ubisoft Philippines, Ubisoft Quebec, Ubisoft Bucharest, Ubisoft Pune, with additional help from external partner Sperasoft. Yeah, it's Ubisoft.
I'm not as the take that I had on For the Players is the same take I'm having here.
Yeah.
Like, this is impressive, but also kind of not.
Yeah.
Because they are all Ubisoft studios. If it was like the example that I used, like we got Activision, we got this guy, and we got that guy, and we got Raven, and we got fucking CD Projekt Red, and we got this big collective of studios. It's like, okay, all that means here is like they farmed the trees off to someone over there. They like, this studio over here can work on the Viking boats. This one works on the Viking helmets. You know what I mean? It's like they've just spread the workload over a bunch of different places, which, if anything, is pretty handy, because if there are more bodies in, less chance of crunch and all that sort of shit. So it's good news. It's also like, okay, nice self-congratulation there, everyone.
Yeah. Paul in the chat says, this is far normal across other publishers than anyone gives credit for. As you say, Betson, they farm resources around, leverage experts in certain areas. I agree.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you've got a team that can, really do like landscapes or can, really get that nice sort of like Vista, look when you're in a game. Like, all right, hey, Vista team, can you not work on Vista because no one fucking use Windows Vista, but can you make cool Vistas?
Yeah.
And they go, oh, good, because I almost got really confused there about when we use Vista, so that's good.
Yeah.
But they just take what the skills are of each place and make a big collective thing, which I'm personally happy to see, because when I see at the start of this game, when I do boot it up and it's like Ubisoft, I'm like, no, this is truly a collective Ubisoft title.
Yeah.
Like everyone at Ubisoft put in on this. I'm like, fuck yeah.
Yeah. I am apprehensive, but just based on the reputation of Assassin's Creed itself and the way it kind of has generated a new path in the past few iterations of the series. Since Black Flag, I believe that the title has kind of just become the same thing every time. And don't get me wrong, its last entry into the series was great. It just wasn't amazing. And it still bared some of the problems that previous entries had.
Yeah, so like I agree with you there. Like I played the first one and fucking hated it. I liked the concept, and the concept was not executed well.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't, and then I didn't give a shit until Origins.
Yeah. Yeah.
Played Origins, I'm like, oh, Origins is gonna be something different. And it was, and they did, like that time away did truly innovate Assassin's Creed in a bunch of ways.
Mm-hmm.
However, they still got stuck into a bunch of the bullshit tropes within Assassin's Creed, like flash forwarding to the future and it's someone in an animus. Like, I don't give a fuck about that. No one cares about the animus.
Paul in the chat says, but for example, there'll be a ton of tech crossover between this and Watch Dogs, so instantly the whole Watch Dogs team gets credited.
Yeah, and as they should. If they've worked on it, they should be credited, like 100%. But yeah, so like even right now, if we, Odyssey was cool in premise too. I'm like, sick, Ancient Greece, this is gonna be rad. Yeah. And then I played it for a little while, and I'm like, and I'm bored with this because this is grindy.
Yeah.
And I don't have 1,000 hours to play this game. So I think that Valhalla, I'm coming into the same way. Like that gameplay trailer, I'm like, the cinematic trailer, I'm like, oh, you are ticking all the boxes. You are looking mint. Absolutely mint. And then I'm going to play it and be like, oh, you are not what I want to play right now.
Yeah. I believe that that's the exact same perception that Assassin's Creed has gotten across the whole franchise since its third entry. Assassin's Creed 1 and 2 was amazing. Its original narrative with Desmond Miles, voiced by Nolan North at the time. Obviously, when Nolan North got paid more at Naughty Dog to play Nathan Drake, he kind of just dumped that entire series and said, fuck this. And then they turned around and said, well, we're going to come up with a brand new story and a new protagonist. And then they had Ezio, and they were like, this is Ezio. And no.
Hey, Dash, no. I don't want to be a bearer of bad news, but I haven't recorded any of this.
You serious?
Deadly.
That's okay. I've got the stream.
I was fucking wigged out. I was like, did I take it to the thing? And I clicked on it, and then I was like, no, oh no.
Wait, I thought we synced up.
We did, but I didn't click record apparently.
Oh great. That's all right. Don't worry about it. Don't stress.
All good.
That's why I pressed record on my end.
Very smart. Very, very smart. But yeah, no, like, because with Origins, it's the same thing, right? It's like Egypt. Yeah. Sick. Yeah. That's exciting. Like, who would have thought an Assassin's Creed Egypt? Like, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. And
you play it and you're like, yeah, this is pretty sick. And then you get stuck in that grind of what it always is. The Ryan Betson rule has been instigated.
Yeah, correct. Once you press record, you got to make sure that you are recording.
True.
Moving on, we still got a little bit more of Assassin's Creed news here, Betson. Obviously, with Assassin's Creed, if you notice when they were actually pushing through the campaign and the marketing of the trailers this past week, there was a lot of Xbox logos on it. A lot of Xbox logos. Not many PlayStation logos on it, I noticed, but a lot of Xbox logos. So in saying that, This story comes by way of Matthew Adler over at IGN, who says, Assassin's Creed Valhalla will support smart delivery on Xbox Series X. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is the next entry into the long-running series and features Viking settlement raids. We already know about all this, thank you. Thankfully, Assassin's Creed Valhalla will support Xbox smart delivery on Series X, as spotted by Shinobi602 on Twitter and confirmed by multiple retailers, including Best Buy. Smart delivery allows you to purchase the game once and play it on your Xbox One or Xbox Series X, providing you the best possible version for your hardware. This is great news for those who may not be able to get their hands on the Series X right at launch, but still want to jump into Assassin's Creed Valhalla when it launches holiday 2020 and eventually play it when they upgrade. This is sick. This is something that should have been instated when we had the crossover of PlayStation 3 to 4, and the same with Xbox 360 to 1. This generation missed that opportunity when we had a lot of titles that included Black Flag, Call of Duty, FIFA, a lot of cornerstone titles that came out on both PlayStation 3 and 4. I think that this is a feature to really grasp and appreciate now, and should be something that I hope PlayStation are listening and watching and learning, because this is something that I believe that if they are ready to release two versions of a title later on this year, I know that PlayStation have the intentions of having legacy mode, backwards compatibility and all that stuff for their PlayStation, but there is no doubt we're going to see some titles that will have two versions from PlayStation 4 to 5 as well. Paul in the chat says PlayStation paying attention, but you say that now, Paj, but it's very concerning for the fact that we're hearing a lot about Xbox, but nothing about PlayStation in terms of these kind of features.
Yeah, so you mentioned that we're seeing a lot of Xbox logos on the Assassin's Creed stuff. Cool.
Yep.
It's a marketing deal.
Yep.
But it's one of those things, I have a feeling part of that is a sweetened deal, right? So I guarantee you that Microsoft went to Ubi and were like, hey, we want to be marketing partners with you on your upcoming Assassin's Creed game.
Yeah.
We understand that. Then they just send it like, and we want you to be on smart delivery. And the conversation would have been like, well, why would we do that when we have to make PlayStation buy 2 copies? We have potential of double the income on this side of the fence, where you on Xbox, you're selling one.
Okay.
From a business, right? But then Microsoft would have been like, in terms of any marketing arrangement, it would have been, well, we will incentivize you, we'll pay you money, you give us marketing rights, here's a bunch of coin, and then to help, I presume, to subsidize that, because right now we have no way of knowing which console will be the superior one moving into the next generation. Like, the reason that we have seen so many third parties team up with PlayStation for marketing is simply because there is more PlayStations in the wild than there has Xboxes. And, even though I part of me doesn't think that everyone's this dumb, but, when they see at the end of the trailer and they see that PlayStation Splash image, they go, ooh, it's on PlayStation. Some super dumb people might think it's exclusive, but okay. But I think that, there had to be that thing. That's why you saw more PlayStation ads. And the random people that seek through to Xbox, they would have had to be sweetened. And I guarantee Ubisoft has been sweetened here. Not a bad thing, because this whole fucking system is awesome.
Yeah.
This whole, what is it? What's it called? Sorry, not Play Anywhere. That's a different one. What's it called?
The one
Smart Delivery.
Smart Delivery, yeah.
Yeah, Smart Delivery is awesome. And it is a really good, positive, customer-facing decision.
Yes.
And that is what Microsoft are truly delivering right now, is a completely well-designed, well-implemented, customer-focused strategy.
Yes.
When then ideally PlayStation will do that, but I kind of don't think it's likely. Xbox did it from the Xbox One because their hand were forced and they couldn't be the big seller. They're like, well, we may not be the big seller, let's be the big pleaser instead.
Well, I believe that's because of the Xbox's transition from Don Matrick to Phil Spencer in that regard, just being a little bit more consumer friendly. in a commercial space rather than just like, oh, here it is. But what I'm saying is, what you bring up a good point with Xbox approaching Ubisoft and saying, hey, we want to market
Presumably.
Well, yeah, presumably. You can say presumably, but I believe that it's a stance right now. That they turned around and said, look, we want to market the new Assassin's Creed and obviously sign a commercial deal. There is the case that Xbox would have sat back and also played the field and said, well, what the fuck is PlayStation doing right now that makes us want us to sign with them? We haven't heard anything about the PlayStation 5. Obviously being developed for the PlayStation 5. I'm not stupid, but what I'm saying is PlayStation haven't made the effort to publicly engage with its consumer base right now. We know nothing other than what the fucking controller looks like. So really, and yeah, we know the hardware specs because Mark Cerny and his, ASMR voice got on stage and talked about it for a good hour. Yeah. Great way to get me to sleep. But
it's gonna be hard.
Yeah, I know. But it was it's just we know nothing. There is no big hype behind it right now. We don't even know what the box looks like. We are nearly halfway through the year, and this box is presumably coming out holiday 2020. The fuck? So we already know what the box looks like for Xbox because they revealed it last year at the fucking Game Awards of all events. I don't know how Jeff Keighley got that one done, but he did. And we'll speak a little bit about Jeff Keighley in a second. But shit, like, this is something that PlayStation should definitely be looking at and going, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that, they just don't stick with their legacy backwards compatibility thing, and that's the end of it. So, Betson, we'll move on to some Nintendo news for the show. This one comes by way of Matt Kim over at IGN, who says, E3 Nintendo Direct in June reportedly delayed. A Direct could come closer to the end of summer. Nintendo will reportedly delay its annual E3 Direct broadcast this year due to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. And Japan's state of emergency orders that have forced more employees to work from home. VentureBeat and Eurogamer have both reported that Nintendo's annual June Direct, which premieres during the week of E3, has been pushed back as Nintendo's employees adjust to work from home orders. Nintendo has reportedly told partners that it needs more time to develop its first-party games. Big And the reason I give it a big is because I think that this was set to be the Direct where they finally announce the release window for Zelda 2, or Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, I should say. And now they've had to kind of, because I believe that's it's kind of weird to think that Nintendo don't have anything to announce right now, or they're taking advantage of the COVID-19 case and saying, we'll wait, we'll hold our cards close to our chests. Because honestly, the way I see it, with these two big next-gen console releases, holiday 2020 guaranteed, they need Zelda this year. There is no ifs or buts or whatever about it. When those consoles launch in holiday 2020, they need Zelda there. I believe that they held off just in case, because if they announce Zelda and for the sake that something even bigger is announced that week, it could have that potential of overshadowing. At the same time, I want to guarantee Nintendo that wouldn't happen, because last year after E3 was done, everybody was talking about Zelda last year. Everybody. It was the talk, besides Betson, because Betson, I don't know what the fuck, but everybody was talking about Zelda once E3 was done last year. So anyway, give me your initial thoughts, because we've got one more Nintendo story to follow up with you.
Look, it is one of those things, it's disappointing for those that are Nintendo fans. They're not going to see what they're working on. I do think Nintendo really works in a different space compared to Microsoft and Sony. Yeah. So in terms of them needing something for the back end of this year, I disagree. I think they could release anything anywhere and it's going to do well. Like, they don't need to be competitive. We saw this with the Switch. It released in March of all fucking places. Yeah. And which is a big difference compared to standard console launches, right?
Yeah.
And it decimated for that exact reason. It demolished. And so that's why I would have the confidence for them to just drop it whenever and it would do incredibly well.
Yeah.
The disappointing thing is that the people won't get to see what's happening. So when they say delayed though, Dash, I may have missed it. Did they give a time frame or is it just like sort of a
end of summer?
End of summer. So that's probably what, like September? Yeah, July, September, sort of around there. So it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Like that's not too bad. Like it's not as if it's like not happening at all. And I think they still can. It just means that there will likely not be a big back end of the year release. Like, well, look, granted, Nintendo could, if they really wanted to, do the 3-month window thing.
Yeah.
You know, which I still think 3 months is like the perfect window of time, because it's just enough time for you to get super hyped and it's right around the corner. You control the conversation for 3 months. No one forgets about you. No one be like, oh man, I'm so sick of staying in this game. Like, no, it's 3 months of fucking hard sell.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah, I agree. In some sad Nintendo news this week, this one comes by Joe Screbbles over at IGN, who says Nintendo confirms account hacks disables Nintendo Network ID logins. There is a positive and a negative out of this, and I'll state that in a second. Nintendo has confirmed that hackers have been accessing Nintendo accounts and pinned the problem down to a Nintendo Network ID login method. In a post on its Japan website, Nintendo says that the hackers were able to access user and password data for Nintendo Network IDs, then use that information to log into Nintendo accounts and potentially make unauthorized purchases. The company estimates around 160,000 Nintendo Network IDs have potentially been affected. NNIDs are an older form of login for Nintendo services, created for the 3DS and the Wii U. The Switch uses newer Nintendo accounts, but the legacy Nintendo IDs can be used to log in. In response, Nintendo had abolished the Nintendo Network IDs logins for the Nintendo accounts and Nintendo Network IDs and Nintendo accounts that look to have been compromised will see automatic password resets. Now, we obviously being friends with Ghost in the Machine. He has a friend, a streamer that he streams with quite often. I can't remember her name, can't recall her name. Pinopi, I think is her name.
Yeah, Pinopi. Yeah.
She was one of the people that was affected by this. She had over $300 of $300 of charges to her credit card one morning she woke up to, and she was one of the people that were affected by this legacy hack. This is the bad news out of this, obviously, is that it has affected a large amount of people, 160,000 Nintendo Switch users. The good news that has come out of this is that Nintendo are now abolishing the Nintendo Network ID factor in the entire situation. Nintendo ID problem right now is still a major problem, whereas it is so archaic. Their entire login scheme is so archaic that it has enabled hackers to simply obtain all this information and simply log into people's accounts and make $5,000. I think I read one of them $5,000 in Fortnite purchases. That's incredibly insane. Nintendo really need to kind of sit back, because every single generation, Nintendo have security problems. They have security flaws. From the GameCube right up into the Switch, it has major security flaws. Nintendo do their best in effort to fix these things, but I feel like they fall short every time.
Yeah, Nintendo have... They are behind when it comes to online services, and that's simply because they just never needed, or they've never deemed them to be necessary.
Yeah,
like if we even look at the most recent example of the Switch with the 47-digit friend code.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, you've got the voice chat app on a mobile device. Like there's all these things that are just aren't built in.
Yeah.
to their online platform.
Yeah.
So then you also have reasons to believe that the back end of that platform is likely not that rad.
Yeah.
It's not as if I don't trust Nintendo Online. I just don't really use it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of handy for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, look, it is certainly a concern, and it is a kind of a sign of the times. Like, people are bored.
Paul in the chat says, "Don't even get me started on visiting people in Animal Crossing. Their online is a fucking joke."
It is. It really, really is. So
Right.
like, with my daily, with my job, like one of the sessions that we run is an online Animal Crossing, and it's a fucking hurdle every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never as simple as it should be.
No. Look, Nintendo's online services have been a clusterfuck since its initial launch, before people were actually paying for the service. I remember trying to play Mario Kart online with a bunch of friends, but it was just staggeringly laggy as fuck.
I can't understand why you need to have a 14-digit friend code.
Yeah.
Why can't you search for a name?
Yeah.
That is more like moronic.
Yeah.
Like, I understand they're trying to do some sort of security measure for, because, you know, with their main focus of audience being children, but no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. Moving on from Nintendo, Betson. This one once again comes by Joe Screbbles over at IGN, who says EA announces digital-only EA Play broadcast in June. EA has announced that it will broadcast a digital-only version of its yearly EA Play showcase on June 11th, and we'll be covering the show live on IGN. Cool. That's just a quick one, just a quick note. Obviously, EA pretty much like trying to cover their bases and announce a whole bunch of new FIFAs. So, good on them. Do you think that E3 week will still see an abundance of digital showcases? I know that Nintendo's obviously pulled out. Do you think we're going to see a state of play? We already guaranteed a Xbox digital event. Do you think that state of play that week will be it? Do you think we're actually getting a look at the PS5?
I think we'll see it before then.
Okay.
But I think that will be more than likely that we will be seeing collective pieces.
Okay.
Because there is that discussion. I think GameSpot looking at doing something over E3 week, as was IGN.
Yep.
And as was kind of funny.
Yep.
So like, I think we won't see the standard big big PlayStation only presentation. Maybe we'll get a more of a scattered collective sort of big oomph together.
Yeah.
But also, I don't understand, like, in terms of that being a viable option for the company. They're like, hey, here's a trailer for upcoming game. Can you smash cut it between like fucking Halo?
Yeah.
No one's going to agree to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Paul
So I don't know.
Yeah. Paul in the chat says, Jason Schreier says a few more weeks. I'll take his word to the bank. We'll see.
For the PS5? Yeah, he seems pretty reliable.
Well, if it's a few more weeks, that's E3. We're in May, Paj.
Yeah, 3 more weeks means before the end of the month.
We'll see anyway. In another showcase story, this one comes by way of Robert Ramsey over at Push Square, who says, some Game Fest announced will host Sony and other major publishers. With the cancellation of E3 2020, it feels like everyone's trying to replace the annual event. IGN, GameSpot, and Games Radar are all doing their own thing, promising digital events that will feature all kinds of next-gen game coverage and industry news. All of these showings are going to make for a busy summer, but it's about to get even busier. A veteran presenter and producer Jeff Keighley has announced the Summer Games Fest, which will stretch all the way from May to August of 2020. According to The Hollywood Reporter, it's going to be, quote, a 4-month rollout of news, announcements, playable demos of upcoming games, interviews, panels, and more from leading developers and publishers, end quote. Meanwhile, Jeff Keighley has dropped a number of big publishers and developer names, all which will be taking part. Phase 1 will include the likes of PlayStation, Activision, Bandai Namco, Square Enix, Bethesda, 2K, CD Projekt Red, and more. Given that this all kicks off in May, it won't be long until we get a lot more information. It's probably safe to assume that the Sony's PS5 reveal will be part of this at some point. That's actually right there, May, I guess. And then what Paj said. So it could be right. Paj could be right. I like this concept. I really do. However, E3 still holds a special note there that it's compacted. It's put into 1 week where it's gaming Christmas. We stay up till like 3 a.m. watching conferences, get up at 6 a.m. for work the next day, get no sleep for 30 hours as Paj does. But it's one of those things there that, like, I like the stretch out for our, like, obviously with the pandemic happening right now, I like that it's going to take this approach where it takes its time to roll out this information, not just give us all this info in one hit. But then it's also, I prefer it in one hit, 1 week, and just to know everything. What are your thoughts?
I do love E3 week. I do enjoy it in terms of the bombardment of news. So it's a really exciting couple of days.
Yep.
However, I like this sort of slowed down approach as well, because it means that everyone kind of gets a go in the spotlight, which is great, which allows for, you know, some news to not just run the field. Yeah. On everyone, which is cool.
Yeah.
One thing I really do appreciate about E3 is that it is niched up.
Yep.
You know, as in, like, this is the Xbox conference, this is the PlayStation conference, this is Devolver, blah 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 blah. So I really get to watch the ones that I care about.
Yeah.
And if I don't, then I ain't watching it, and I'll just get the highlights. But when we're doing these big collective mushed together things, it's like, oh, cool, here's an hour presentation, and I cared about 2 things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it does have that concern of a potential waste of time.
Yeah.
But I also kind of don't. I don't know. It's a weird thing. Having it staggered out is cool. I do, honestly, I do have some concerns with outlets like IGN and GameSpot, sorry, getting involved.
Yeah.
Because I do feel that it's a big conflict. Mostly from a monopoly standpoint.
Yeah, I agree.
Because they are the proprietor of that news. They get first run on that news.
Yep.
And I think that's really kind of gross for other outlets getting involved.
Yep.
Because they get to control that news. And I'm not a big fan of that personally. But with using Jeff Keighley as an example, fuck yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah, I mean, he's a good dude. He runs a good show. I have faith that he would, because he's known, he's trusted, he's respected.
Yeah, he really is.
So yeah, I don't see there being any problem with anything having his involvement.
Yeah. Betson, moving on to the last 2 segments of the night, we're going to talk a little bit about, Predator Hunting Grounds.
Yeah.
So you and I sat down the other night to kind of get our final thoughts together on the game, and we kind of had a few games. We played together online. I'll ask you first. What were your initial impressions of the game before patch, pre-patch, and post-patch?
Yeah, so what we're referencing to is patch 1.6, I believe.
1.06,
1.06, thank you. So both you and I, Dash, we played this at launch, so, we were both provided codes as from PlayStation Australia. We had different approaches because of it. So, early on, I couldn't get a game for the life of me. 45-minute waits, actual... cannot get in.
Yep.
Cannot get in games. So we're trying to get ahead of this review because it is day of release.
Yep.
I'm like, all right, let's smash it.
Yep.
Can't get a game.
Nope.
It's impossible.
Yep.
But we did have a look, and when we discovered that there had been a patch, and in the patch notes, they mentioned one of the fixes essentially being netcode fixes. Both you and I were like, okay, look, let's give it another run. Let's give it another run.
Yeah.
So you and I spent a couple of hours on it, and I actually had a more enjoyable experience.
Same.
Although I don't think there was any overall upgrades in terms of appearance, gameplay that I could notice. Like they did mention in the patch notes of changes to some sort of gameplay elements. Like overall, it's felt like the same package, but I do feel that there was some bias by accident by having to sit there and wait for this game
Mm.
in order for you to get in, and by the time you get in, you're already angry.
Yeah.
So the game, the game doesn't look immaculate.
No.
But because you're already frustrated, you're like, oh, and the game looks like shit too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that placebo effect, as you put it. It's one of those things where, in essence, when pre-patch, I'm talking here, when you sat in that lobby for such a long time waiting to actually join a game, and you're just frustrated beyond belief that you're actually not playing it yet, you're in game, and the roughness, because how rough the game really is, it's rough around the edges altogether. And I didn't expect anything less from Ilphonic, to be honest, in terms of that, because of my experience playing Friday the 13th. But it was just one of those things where it just angered me that I had to wait that long to get into a game, and then had to, and just the experience of the game, what it delivered, it was not worth that wait. It was not worth that 45-minute wait, that lobby wait. It was just a fuck you almost.
Yeah, but once we were getting into matches in like 2 minutes, and then even if the gameplay itself was like 8 minutes, it's like, all right, cool, let's dive back in.
Yep.
So we actually ran through a ton of matches. Like you and I, we both got to experience, because we were playing together, which we will automatically shoot into fire team.
Yep.
Which was interesting. Like we understand why, from a gameplay perspective, why we wouldn't be separated. Because if I was the Predator, I could be like, hey, I'm over here.
Yeah, there was a staggering improvement in terms of lobby times and everything after the post,
and even just matchmaking as well.
Yeah.
Like pings were better.
Yep.
We were getting more full lobbies.
Yeah.
Okay, there were improvements overall, and then by the nature of that, and I do believe that you and I playing together also changed our approach to it.
There was a better dynamic. Yeah,
there was, like, we were discussing that there are lulls in the game, and that is when you're being the fire team, you are just hitting your objectives, you are getting what you need to be done. Yeah. But when the Predator gets involved, it becomes fucking intense, and it's awesome.
Yeah,
and those like couple of minutes are gnarly. And then when you happen to down the Predator, like you and I both did the whole like yes, as when we sort of teamworked on it, and those moments are what these multiplayer games are trying to get, and it does deliver those things, but it's just everything in between them that get, every outlet ever, that moment to moment gameplay is just not quite there to really justify those big payoff moments.
Yeah, I think what it was really was because of its initial presentation and what it promised. I remember when it was revealed back at the May State of Play last year, my thought was, man, this is going to be rough, just based on my thought of Friday the 13th. And yeah, it was rough. It's rough around the edges. And then once again, with the patch coming out, it's still rough. It's not like I'm telling... it's an arena shooter that is just... there's not that added layer of polish to it. Regardless of a patch or not. While I did have a better time playing it post-patch with you, I still felt that it was too unpolished for me to still appreciate. It still had... the AI was still dumb as fuck. It felt very much like I was playing with a bunch of zombies on the map. The gameplay itself is still rough. Like, some of the netcode improvements, and I put that in quotations, that they've made are really not improvements. A lot of the AI are try to act as an overlaid distraction while you're actually trying to kill Predator in the game. It becomes an annoyance more than anything. So there is. Yeah.
So that's what you're saying. There is that issue. Like when for those who don't know, when you're playing, although you are on your objectives and there is the Predator, there is the threat of AI as well. So they have these basic grunts, there's some heavies as well, and they sort of populate the objective points. So when you're in there, you also have to worry about the AI, and you also have to worry about the Predator.
Yep.
Now, saying that though, the AI is dumb as fuck. You walk in there, and they if you trigger an event, they will almost like PS2. You could sit there
Yeah.
and they see you and they just run into an open area, stand still and shoot you. There is no complex to it, which I understand why, because if you got complex AI and you're fighting a predator, there is a concern. But they are at a point where they are just an inconvenience.
Yes.
Like their I wouldn't the damage is a little bit too high to be just mooks.
Yeah.
So they it was some of the early games that we played, like that's what took me out, not the predator, this AI that just popped up out of nowhere and wrecked my day.
Yeah.
Like normally, like they do kind of come in from off the mini map and they make their way through.
Yeah.
But occasionally one just pops up in the middle and like, you know, a heavy just gets behind me and shotguns my back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is actually a massive deterrent for the game. But I understand why it's there. It's supposed to be sort of like little choke points, which is fine from a gameplay perspective, from what they're trying to deliver. But the execution is the problem. So I think that actually explains Predator Hunting Grounds as a whole, right?
Yeah.
Like it is great in premise.
Yep.
The idea of a predator, like one of the ultimate hunters in popular culture, versus a group of people, like it's asymmetrical multiplayer at its kind of finest, right?
Yeah.
Because the right on the ground, the concept is awesome. However, the execution, whether it be in the online delivery, whether it be in the gameplay, whether it be in the visuals, whether it be sound design, like everything just didn't quite execute the best that it could have.
Yeah.
And I don't think that is a fault of Illphonic, because I do think in some ways that this is in fact an improvement over Friday the 13th.
Oh yeah, no. Don't get me wrong. It pales to comparison. Like Friday the 13th pales in comparison to this. Like this is way better than that game. Way better.
Yeah, so they certainly have improved what they do here, because this is with this is their two sort of big games.
Yep.
Like they're like, okay, this is what we do. We make asymmetrical multiplayer. And like, all right, cool. Oh, sorry, my son's come in, and you're also not wearing pants. You're gonna be very careful.
Oh, here we go.
Boom. 2 hands. Sorry. For fun fact, my son doesn't really like to poo that often.
Oh, great.
For some reason. Just fun fact, everyone. So I've kind of had to, we give him fist bumps when he does. It's a little like positive reinforcement. So you have to come in to tell me that he's done poos.
Oh, fantastic.
So go my son, I guess. But yeah, so like in terms of Illphonic, like that they've made their tent poles. That's cool. That's awesome. And they have showed growth and improvement. One sec, mate. They have growth and improvement within their genre, and cool. So if anything, it makes me wonder whatever their next one would be.
Yeah.
Could have potentially be something amazing, because they are still a AA studio at their core, and they've delivered something pretty good for AA, but it also could have been so much better.
Yeah. I got a chance to sit down and play Streets of Rage 4. So Streets of Rage 4 was I gotta say that I was a big beat 'em up kid. I loved my beat 'em up games back in the day. I loved River City Ransom, the Final Fight series, Double Dragon, Streets of Rage. I love them all. They were all part of they were all such great beat 'em ups, and to see that beat 'em ups are still getting the royal treatment now in our current generation is fantastic. The remastered kind of deal though with Streets of Rage, I feel like what they tried to instigate with this return is a retro inspired feel while maintaining a lot of the gameplay loop that was established within the series. So it actually was a true to form Streets of Rage title that connects with the older titles. For enthusiasts, for devoted fans of the original series, they will appreciate that. For people who are new to the series, I'm not sure whether they will appreciate the pacing, because it can come off sometimes a little slow, but I believe that the gameplay loop, the animation, the sound design, and just everything, the amalgamation of the entire experience really shines through some of the offsets. And I believe the only offset it really has is its pacing. it just does come off as a little slow compared to some of the beat 'em ups that we actually get our hands on these days. Like River City Girls, fantastic entry into the River City series, into the River City franchise, and kind of reestablishes that formula once again. It really made the thing with River City Girls was, I believe they borrowed a lot of elements from the Scott Pilgrim beat 'em up that came out on PlayStation and Xbox a few years ago, but we can't ever experience that again because due to licensing deals and all that stuff from Ubisoft. The thing with Streets of Rage, though, that really I think really pushes it is its art design. It has such an incredible art design behind it, and a soundtrack to boot that just, if you love your retro games, this is really the ultimate beat 'em up experience at the moment. And don't get me wrong, River City Girls was amazing. Like, River City Girls is one of my favorite beat 'em ups in recent times. I feel like Streets of Rage just has its edge over it due to how smooth and sleek it really is. Some of the combos that you can execute, and I was speaking to you about that as well while you were doing, I think it was Young and the Wrestlers, or either one of your gameplay streams the other night or the other week. And I was saying, dude, I'm about to jump in, and you were like, cool, let me know. And as soon as I said,
I was when I was painting minis, yeah.
Oh, there you go, you're painting minis, that's right. And I said, I played it for 2 seconds, dude, and it's already freaking awesome. Because it really was, like, just to kind of sit there and feel how well they've executed some of the combo systems and the specials, it was sleek, dude, and it felt great to play. Now, I will say, yes, its drawback is its pacing. And when I say that is mainly entirely when you're actually like walking through the street and everything, it just feels a little off, feels a little slow. Whereas a lot of beat 'em ups these days feel like when you're walking through the street, you're actually walking at a little bit more of a faster pace. Because
yeah, it's got that kind of like that slide. It's a bit more speed.
Yeah. And I believe that's a factor now because of attention span, really, because people like to do things fast. This doesn't do that. This really relies on that gameplay loop that's already been established, where like Street of Rage has always been known to be a little slower. Slow as Double Dragon. But that was back then. I don't know if that will have that same appeal for a newer generation now who haven't really experienced anything like this. But, I mean, look, time will tell. At the same time, it's an amazing game. I'm about to wrap up my review on it tonight. I'm actually halfway through it. But, yeah, it is a must-play and must-pick up. This is, by the way, no code received on this one. This is solely purchased by myself. And I'm actually, like I'm telling you, I'm recommending, highly recommending this title. Street of Rage 4 is a fantastic title, dude, and it's awesome. So there you go.
Yeah. So it's not my wheelhouse. I don't have a long history with like it was on Sega, yeah.
Sega. Yeah, it was Sega Genesis, yeah.
Like I never played Sega Genesis at the time or ever.
Yeah.
So I don't really have that connection. However, a co-founder of the Pop Culturist, Dylan, he's having a great week. Because he is a ginormous Predator fan.
Oh, fantastic.
And he is a ginormous Streets of Rage fan.
Awesome.
So he's having a fucking fantastic time right now. Let's put that there.
Fuck yeah. Betson, we're going to wrap up the podcast with the Dash Gamer Global Gaming releases. The Dash Gamer Podcast Global Gaming releases for the next fortnight. Yeah. So, Betson, coming out today on PC, someday you'll return. So, May 5th. Deep Rock Galactic out on PC and Xbox One May 13th. Signs of the Sojourner, I don't know how to pronounce that, out on PC May 14th. Eon or Ion Fury, I think it was Ion Fury. PS4, Xbox One, and Switch May 14th. Those Who Remain PC, PS4, Xbox One May 15th. And Hatsune Miku Project Diva Mega Mix Switch May 15th. Not much happening there.
Nah.
We got a dry month ahead of us, dude.
Oh, it's gonna be rough.
Oh.
Clear them backlogs, ladies and gentlemen. Get ahead of the likes of Last of Us and whatnot. Get ahead of it.
Guys, if you didn't know, this has been the Dash Gamer Podcast, our bi-weekly gaming podcast We take you through the latest in the world of video gaming. Don't forget to follow Mr. Ryan Betson over on Twitter at HaggardMC. You can follow myself on Twitter at DashGamers. Don't forget to follow the show over on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Spotify. We can give us those cheeky 5-star ratings and catch the VOD over on dashgamer.com. Betson, this has been a hell of a show.
It has. It's been good to sort of approach my shortcomings.
Yeah.
In my opinions, that's the best part.
I'm glad I could highlight that for you.
Okay, I know I'm wrong. I don't know shit. So,
guys, we'll catch you in another 2 weeks. I'll catch you next week on Operation PlayStation with Mr. Paul James, where we talk about the latest in PlayStation. You can also catch the latest weekly PlayStation news on For the Players with Mr. Ryan Betson over at the Pop Culturist. But until I see you next week, take care of each other, stay at home, and wash them hands. Wash them hands because, yeah, we're still in a pandemic.
Wash them!
Dashgamer.com